That night, he leaned back, savoring the last of his whiskey. It took about a day before the chaos erupted. He heard a commotion in the corridor outside his quarters, the voices sharp with alarm and distress. While he couldn't see what was happening, a chilling certainty settled in his gut. He knew. Instead of investigating, he just sat back in his chair, staring at the blank walls. The sounds grew closer, screaming, the crackle of weapon fire echoing down the hallway. Then the piercing blare of alarm klaxons filled the air, punctuated by the deep booms of heavy artillery from the ground below. The battle had finally reached him. The world outside was ending, and all he could do was listen. Just then, his door blew open, and two men walked in. One of them was his brother, Dan. David spun his chair around, and a slow smile spread across his face when he saw him. "Well, it took you long enough," he said, the relief clear in his voice. He gestured towards an empty bottle on his desk. "I love the whiskey, by the way, my favorite brand." Dan smirked. "Yeah, I figured you would." David leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "How did you even get it to me?" Dan's smile widened. "That's my little secret," he replied mysteriously. "Now, we have to go. The Council's security is in complete disarray, but they're going to get their wits together soon and come back with a counterstrike. We need to move now." And with that, the real mission began. Dan slid a weapon over to David. David picked it up, weighing it in his hand. He glanced at Dan. "Kind of small, don't you think?" Dan shrugged. "It's all I've got on me." David's eyes flicked to the much larger rifle Dan was holding. "What about that one?" Dan clutched his weapon tighter. "No way. This is my favorite." David gave him a pointed look. "Well then, you should give your favorite brother your favorite weapon." Dan just stared back. "You're my only brother, just like this is my only favorite weapon." And the answer is still no. Suddenly, the air erupted in a hail of gunfire. They charged into the corridor, their squad pinned down behind them, the battle just beginning. There was no way out. Finally, Dan raised his wrist to his mouth. "Arcola, this is Dan. We need emergency transport for 14 people." As he spoke, he slapped a small device onto David's shoulder. David looked at him, confused, and opened his mouth to ask what it was. But before he could get a word out, a shimmering light enveloped them all. The next second, they were standing on the transport pad of the starship Arcola. David stumbled, looking around wildly. "What the hell just happened?" he yelled. But Dan was already off the pad, his hand cupped over his wrist communicator, shouting orders. "Bridge! Break orbit now! Get us the hell out of here before they bring those ground cannons online. Go, go, go!" The ship lurched as it blasted into deep space. David hurried to catch up with Dan, his eyes scanning the strange corridor. "Dan, where on earth did you get this ship?" he asked, bewildered. Dan just smiled as they walked. "Let's just say it's borrowed, and we need to get it back without a single scratch." David was still completely lost. Dan wasn't giving him a straight answer. "You jacked this ship, didn't you?" David pressed, his voice a mix of awe and accusation. "You stole it from another alien race." Dan's smile widened. "Nope. This is an Earth Force ship, my friend." David ran a hand along the wall, the material smooth and unfamiliar. "I've spent over 30 years in the service," he said, shaking his head. "I've never seen walls like this. Is this some kind of new design?" Dan's silence was the only answer, leaving David to wonder what other secrets this ship held. Dan said no. "I'll explain everything once we're safely out of Council space. Now, let me do my job and get everyone out of here." David just nodded. As they walked onto the bridge, Dan went straight to the captain's seat and sat down. He looked at the helm and said, "Everyone is aboard. Now, let's get out of here. Make your course 143, mark 281. The helm keyed in the course, and the ship responded instantly, like flipping a light switch. Then Dan, turned to navigation and ordered them to make the jump. But navigation pushed back, warning against it. They were still inside the system. A jump like that could gravitationally destabilize the nearby moons, which in turn could throw the planets out of orbit. Dan just calmly said, "I don't care, make the jump." Navigation acknowledged the order, entering coordinates for a nearby solar system, not one that would lead us back to human space. Suddenly, reports flooded in. Warships were entering the system right ahead of us. Dan looked at the navigation officer. "How about it?" "We need to go. I don't want to get into a sustained firefight with council ships." Tactical chimed in. "Sir, we can easily destroy those ships." Dan shook his head. "Thank you, but that's not the idea. We came for David, and now we're leaving." With the coordinates locked, navigation made the jump. We arrived in the adjacent system. "Helm," Dan ordered. "Take us to the system star. Mask our signature from any search missions." As the ship moved into a close orbit, Dan finally relaxed. "Now we can take a breath." That's when David exploded. "What the hell is going on? Where did you get this ship?" "I recognize some of these people, ... They're my old crew." "Do you mind telling me what is going on?" Dan cut him off. "Oh, what? No, thank you for breaking you out and rescuing you." David paused for a moment, then said, "You're right. Thank you all for helping me get out. I was only a day away from being executed." You could see the smiles and reverence on everyone's faces, including Dan's. Then Dan asked for a sitrep. The XO reported, "Minor hull charring. Weapons still at full capacity. The crew sustained only minor injuries and are being treated in medical." Don nodded his head, then got up and began walking off the bridge. As he left, Dan motioned for David to accompany him. David quickly caught up to Dan as they began walking down a long metallic corridor. "To answer your question about where we got this ship from," Don started, his voice echoing slightly in the vast hallway. "Back when I was commanding my own battle group, we were running fighter maneuvers deep inside the Kuiper Belt. One of my pilots, trying to get the drop on the other team, decided to hide inside a large cavern on one of the asteroids." He paused, looking at David. When he got inside, he didn't just find a hiding spot. He discovered 4 of these ships, just like this one, anchored in place. I immediately ordered all pilots back to the carrier. We went to Condition 1 and started scanning the rock. The strange thing? We didn't see a single energy reading coming from it. It was completely dead to our sensors. I rallied the squads and led the boarding party myself. We breached the hull, and as we stepped inside, a beam of light scanned each of us, one by one. A synthetic voice echoed through the vast chamber. Humans detected. The air was thin, almost unbreathable at first, a heavy pressure in our chests. But slowly, the atmosphere began to stabilize, becoming rich enough for us to take off our environmental suits. We stood there, weapons raised, scanning the alien architecture, completely clueless about where this ship had come from or who built it. Then the voice returned, calmer this time. "Welcome, humans. This is the Arcola." A chill went down my spine. We were completely in the dark, with no idea who or what was speaking to us from the shadows of this immense vessel. A Marine called out into the darkness, "Who's there?" A voice echoed back, not from a person, but from the very ship itself. "It is me, the Arcola." We all froze, utterly confused. Another Marine stammered, "A talking ship? How is that even possible?" The Arcola calmly explained that it was the ship's artificial intelligence. We were completely baffled. Was this an alien vessel? Or a top-secret weapon built by Earth, hidden out here as a last-ditch defense? David asked if it was from Earth. Dan was certain it wasn't. As we spent more time with the Arcola, a mind-blowing truth began to unfold. Long ago, another human race, the Terraphos, existed. They were incredibly advanced, and their legacy was about to change everything we thought we knew. So these incredibly advanced ships were built millions of years ago by a species called the Terraphos. They basically parked them in our asteroid belt, waiting for the next wave of humans to find them. The thing is, the Terraphos left our galaxy a long, long time ago, so these ships have just been sitting there, dormant for ages. David, still trying to wrap his head around all this, asked Dan, "So, how many of these ships are left?" Dan explained, "We've got 47 now. There used to be a couple hundred, but time and asteroid collisions took their toll. Get this, one of those asteroids was the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. Its impact was so devastating because the ship's power core amplified the explosion. When they finally reached the medical bay, the place was packed. As they walked in, the entire room erupted in cheers for David. He felt a bit awkward, knowing people were hurt rescuing him, but he managed to smile and thank them for their bravery. After a few minutes of chatting with everyone, we turned and left the medical bay. Dan looked over at me and asked if I was hungry. I couldn't help but smile. Honestly, I was absolutely starved. So we started walking down to the mess hall to grab a meal. While we were eating, a question that had been bugging me finally came out. I asked him, "How did you know? How did you know how to activate these ships?" Dan just smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. "That's why I took the commander position at the Kuiper station," he said. He explained that the whole mining operation and the station itself were real, but they were also a clever ruse. Earth Command didn't really care about meeting new aliens or sharing resources, especially since most of them couldn't care less about us. After all, as far as they were concerned, we weren't even an interstellar species. David asked the question, and Dan just smiled. "We're well past intergalactic with these ships," he said. "We've got one right now, out several thousand galaxies away, retracing the Terraphos tracks." He took a bite of his food. "We're hoping to find them, and maybe even make contact." David looked thoughtful. "If they're still around." "Of course, if they're still around," Dan agreed. They ate in silence for a moment before David spoke again. "The Galaxy Council will figure out it was Earth that broke me out. They'll come looking for retribution." Dan just shrugged his shoulders. "Maybe," he said casually. "But hopefully by then, we'll have a whole fleet of these ships, more advanced than anything the entire council has combined. They won't even think about messing with us." David started getting that familiar feeling again. He looked over at Dan and said, "Well, I'm beginning to have that feeling again. I think the council will figure out it was humanity, but they won't know how we did it." Dan just smiled and replied, "Yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it." They both nodded in agreement and finished their meal. Afterward, Dan showed David to a set of quarters. He opened the door, and they stepped into a surprisingly spacious place. It had a small living room, a kitchen area, a single bedroom, and an attached bathroom. Best of all, there were several large windows. Through them, you could see entire solar systems whizzing past as the ship traveled. It was a breathtaking sight, a constant reminder of the vast galaxy they were navigating. Dan left David alone in his quarters, hoping he'd finally get some rest. He made his way back to the bridge, the quiet hum of the ship a familiar comfort. As he stepped through the doors, he saw Earth Command on the main view screen. Commander Simpson's face filled the display, his expression grim. Dan walked closer and offered a tired greeting. The commander didn't return the pleasantry. "What's wrong?" Dan asked, a knot forming in his stomach. Simpson's voice was heavy. "Were you successful in rescuing David?" Dan nodded slowly. "Yes, we have him. But something tells me you already know that." A sigh came from the screen. "We do." Dan's confusion turned to dread. "Why? What's happened?" The commander's next words hit like a physical blow. "Because a small fleet of Galaxy Council ships just entered our solar system. They're on a direct course for Earth. Dan settled into his command chair, the hum of the bridge a familiar comfort. He turned to his second-in-command. "Have you deployed the fleet yet?" Commander Simpson stood at attention. "We've deployed the conventional ships, sir. We don't want to tip our hand just yet." Dan nodded in agreement. A wise move. How long was I out? Simpson checked the console. "You'll be returning to the Sol system in 2 hours, sir." He acknowledged the update. "Understood. We'll try to stall them for that long." Dan's gaze hardened. "Are we going to give David back up?" Simpson's response was immediate and firm. "No. You took our citizen on false pretenses." The tension on the bridge was suddenly thick enough to cut with a knife. Commander Simpson's voice crackled through the comms, urgent and direct. "Dan, do you have a plan yet?" "Can we do pinpoint jumps?" he pressed. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I believe so, Commander." His next question hung heavy in the silence of the bridge. "Can you jump us in right beside the Earth fleet? Side by side?" My mind raced. "I'll make the calculations and run them through the AI, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Quickly, Dan," he urged. "Affirmative, Commander," I said, and the line went dead. My navigation officer was already a step ahead, her fingers flying across the console, feeding the data to the ship's brain. Moments later, the result flashed on the screen. "Denied," the AI's calm voice announced. "Specific calculations unfeasible." But before despair could set in, it offered an alternative. Jumping in place, directly above the Earth fleet, is the optimal solution. It was risky, but it was our only shot. Don got back to Commander Simpson with the alternative plan. The commander thought for a second, then gave the go-ahead. Dan explained they'd have to drop out of warp to recalculate before they could jump again. Simpson agreed, but urged them to hurry. Things could get messy before they arrived. Dan acknowledged and gave the order. As soon as the ship dropped back into normal space, David felt the sudden stop. He rushed to the bridge and found a scene of controlled chaos. He went straight to Dan. "What's going on?" Dan looked up, his face grim. "The Galactic Council," he said. "They have a small fleet entering our home system right now." David was stunned. "They already know?" Dan just nodded. "Yeah, maybe." "So what's the plan?" David asked. Dan's eyes were fixed on the star chart. "We're going to do a pinpoint jump," he said. "Arrive directly above Earth's fleet." David stared at him. "Is that wise?" Dan just shrugged. "I don't know, but we're doing it anyway." The light on the console blinked green. The calculation was complete. Commander Dan's voice echoed across the ship-wide comms, a heavy calm in his tone. "Attention all hands. The artificial intelligence has confirmed it's ready." A pause stretched on, thick with unspoken tension. "An enemy fleet is approaching our home world. We are about to execute an extraordinary jump to intercept them before they reach Earth." He took a breath. "I won't lie to you. I'm not sure how this will end. Our best calculations put us directly above the Earth fleet, giving us the tactical advantage. At worst, ... He let the word hang in the air. "We could jump directly into Earth, or even our sun." Another silence, then his final words, a solemn prayer broadcast to every corner of the vessel. "May God have mercy on our souls." Set condition 1 throughout the ship, battle stations. The klaxons began blaring, a controlled chaos as everyone scrambled to their posts. The noise was deafening, a symphony of urgency. One by one, the departments reported in: engineering, ready; weapons, ready; medical, standing by. All systems green across the board. Don and Dave exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. Dave gave a firm nod, a gesture of trust and readiness. With that, Dan strode to the commander's chair, the weight of his command settling on his shoulders as he sat. He looked at the navigation officer, giving the signal. The navigator began the countdown, 3, 2, 1, jump! In a flash of distorted light and a lurch of inertia, they arrived. The view screen shimmered, revealing the familiar glow of the Sol system. Immediately, the ship's computer began its scan, its calm voice cataloging the star, the planets, and every object in between. They were home. The AI gave us a positive report. We were above the Earth fleet, right where we wanted to be. Then, the Council fleet saw our massive ship just appear on their scans. They immediately began to slow down, right around Jupiter's orbit. Earth Command wasted no time and sent out a message to the Council warships. They said, "This ship that just appeared is the most powerful warship humanity has ever created." They didn't stop there. And as you are aware, this is the same ship that was used in the forced release of Commander David Thomas. It would be wise for you to retreat from this system. If you do not, you will see the full force of this ship. The gauntlet was thrown. What happens next? Getting close, but not too close, just completely harassing them. The Council fleet kept pushing, getting more and more aggressive. Finally, one of their ships couldn't hold back anymore and fired on the Arcola. It was a point-blank hit, a full barrage from all of its weapons. Normally, a blast like that would have been enough to vaporize any other ship, just turn it into space dust. But this was the Arcola. Dan, on the bridge, immediately asked for a sitrep. His XO's voice came over the calm and steady. "Minor hull damage, sir. A few minor injuries, but we are still in the fight." A wave of relief washed over the bridge. Dan ordered them to pull back and take a low orbit around the planet below. He wanted all top-mounted weapons aimed straight up at the fleet, keeping the damaged section of the hull safely pointed away from the enemy. The fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. After that miss, the Council ships just hung there in the void, silent. You could almost feel them holding their breath, waiting to see what we'd do next. Would we fire back? Were they weighing their options, trying to figure out their next move? But while they hesitated, Earth wasn't just sitting around. More ships warped in, forming a tight defensive perimeter around our home. A shield of steel and resolve. And don't forget, our other Terrafo ships are still powered up, lurking in the asteroid belt like patient predators. If a real fight breaks out, they're perfectly positioned to hit the Council fleet from behind. Of course, nobody wants that. We all know how petty and arrogant the Council can be. A full-blown war would be catastrophic for everyone. We're hoping they see reason, but we're ready if they don't. A few more hours creep by, and then our scopes light up like a holiday tree. It's not just a few ships this time. It's half of the Galactic Council's fleet, 2,000 warships, blotting out the stars as they pour into our solar system. This was the moment we all dreaded. Suddenly, a voice, dripping with arrogance, booms across every single communication device on Earth. "This is War Chancellor Trellick. We know you illegally raided our council chambers and orchestrated the escape of a prisoner set for execution. We demand the return of that human and the total surrender and subjugation of your entire species." Commander Simpson's face was stone. He keyed his mic and acknowledged the Chancellor's demand. Then he offered his own. "Chancellor, we have an old Earth saying for situations like this. It goes something like this. Up yours. Now, here's our counteroffer. You and your fleet leave our system, and you never, ever return under these circumstances." The line went dead silent. "As you depart our system, you will broadcast a message to every civilization you pass. You will apologize and beg for 1,000 years of forgiveness for the atrocities you and your council committed." The War Chancellor's face contorted with rage. He snarled, refusing the demand outright. He promised that not only would the commander die, but he would be the reason humanity is wiped from the galaxy forever. A slow, defiant smirk spread across Commander Simpson's face. "So be it," he said, and cut the channel. His voice then boomed across the entire fleet. All ships, weapons hot. Weapons free. Good hunting. A new war had just begun, and this time, humanity was fighting for its very soul. Commander Simpson's voice echoed across the fleet-wide comms, chilling and resolute. All ships, weapons hot, weapons free. Good hunting. His final command was a death sentence. Eliminate that fleet from our skies. I want to see Stardust where that fleet was. Every ship acknowledged. But Earth had one more surprise up its sleeve. A network of offensive satellites and defensive force shield satellites deployed, encasing the entire planet in a protective bubble. On the bridge of the Arcola, Dan gave the order. Open fire. The ship unleashed hell. 60 top-mounted cannons fired simultaneously, launching plasma bolts the size of locomotives just below the enemy fleet. Each cannon could fire 6 times a minute. A staggering 21,000 shots from this one vessel alone. In that first volley, the Arcola single-handedly vaporized 10 council ships. The battle for Earth had begun. The War Chancellor pressed his attack, firing relentlessly into the human fleet. The barrage was devastating, taking out 11 human ships in a single fiery volley. But then the Arcola answered. Its cannons roared to life once more, and another 15 council ships disintegrated into space dust. Enraged, the War Chancellor redirected his entire remaining force onto the Arcola. It was a desperate gambit. The only way to hit the massive ship was head-on, or from below. The council ships began to dive, swarming around the Arcola like angry hornets. But for the Arcola's gunners, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. Seeing the opportunity, the tactical officer made a bold call. He unleashed the ship's artificial intelligence, giving it full control of the cannons. The AI immediately brought another power core online, dedicating it exclusively to the weapon systems. The battle had just reached a whole new level of intensity. The AI brought another power core online, dedicating it exclusively to the weapon systems. This was a game changer. Suddenly, the cannons could fire 14 shots a minute. Nothing, absolutely nothing, could withstand such a relentless onslaught. Before anyone, including the War Chancellor himself, could even grasp what was happening, the Council's fleet was in ruins. Ships were either completely destroyed or crippled beyond repair. It was the single worst miscalculation of the War Chancellor's entire career. He had catastrophically underestimated the capabilities of that one ship. And here's the kicker. Earth still has over 40 more just like it, hidden throughout various asteroid belts, all powered up and ready to go. But they're smart. They're not ready to show their full hand just yet. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe for more. Phantom Static, where the phantoms speak through the static.